welcome back. My name is Frank Miranda. I'm the Grateful Artist, and I'm making this video because I want to explain a couple of things that were never explained to me when I was younger and considering possibly being an artist. And so I just wanted to cover some of those things and the way that I see it, because I'm just like you, have access to the internet and to different websites, Instagram, YouTube videos, online videos that people post, that artists posts. And so this is the things that I want to cover that maybe you might not have seen somewhere. And it's my trajectory, it's my path to becoming an artist that I've gone through and I'm going through. I think every artist is constantly learning new things and new mediums. And so you never really stop learning as an artist, and you're always experimenting. At least you should be, I think, to maximize the quality of your and the reach of your art. So first things first, when they talk about, so the first thing is drawing. And when people talk about someone being a good artist when they're young, they talk about the person's drawing ability. And what that really means is their ability to understand proportion and copying things as they see it, be from imagination or from a reference. And so the draftsmanship is what other people refer to this as, is not only your ability to see proportions, but your line weight, the way that you use a pencil, which is how most people start, or with a pen. That can be affected. That can be, you can get better at that with training. You're born with certain abilities, and the big thing you're born with that helps a lot with art is your vocation for art, your interest in it, and how you don't become bored by it, and you can do it for a long time. If you really are into art, you love art, then you can dedicate time to it and you will get better. It can be taught. So that's the first thing that you're going to do as an artist. You're going to learn to draw. And the only thing I can say about this is precision is very important. You have to learn how to measure. You have to learn how to develop some system where you can use shapes and references to help you get the image exactly how it is. The closer that it is, the better that it is, and it can be measured. So that's what I have to say about that. And there's a lot of tutorials online that you can use to get better at that. So the first one is drawing. Number two, the second thing that I learned as an artist was how to assess value. And I don't mean the value of art. I mean the value of the spaces between black and white, between your main pigments. Value is how dark or light the gray is between your black and your white and your black being the extremes, and then the shades in between. It's very difficult to assess this, and a lot of times you see people, they refer to it as shading, and it's what they really mean is value. And when they say I'm not that good at shading, what they mean is they're having a tricky time with value, and it is a tricky thing. And you're constantly going to be measuring that as an artist. It can get easier as your eye gets more trained, but it's something that you're constantly dealing with. And if something doesn't look right and your construction lines are right, meaning your proportions are right, then it's your value that you blew, because you can get the color wrong, but if the value is right, it's understood. Value is the most important thing. That's what my teacher, Abdon Romero, taught me. And he's absolutely right. At the same time, when you're doing value learning, the next thing that you're doing, well, you're doing it simultaneously, is learning the medium, which means how you're applying your lines on that piece of paper or canvas. The first medium that most people learn is pencil or graphite, which is what they teach you in school. They teach you with that. You learn to write with that, you move with that, then you move to pen. Of course, a pencil can be erased up to a certain point, so it's a lot more attractive for an artist as he's learning. The next medium that they teach you with after graphite in art schools and most programs is with charcoal. Charcoal is easier and more forgiving than pencil, and it's easier to apply, and it's actually, you can erase a lot easier than you can with pencil, so it's very comfortable to work with. It's got its hangups and it's a mess. It can be a mess. the charcoal. But it's what you're usually taught with at this point, and that's what they usually teach you, the final steps of drawing and of value assessment. I skipped that step. I did a little bit of that, but I skipped that step. I went straight to oil painting, and I found that it was easier to do the value changes with paint than it was with graphite. It's just with charcoal. But if you can do it with charcoal, paint is going to be okay. It's going to be pretty easy. It's got rules that you got to follow, and but again, that's the step that you're usually taught at, and I recommend that you do it. There's incredible tutorials online about that. Now, at this point is where the tutorials get a little weak, because it takes a long time to paint. Charcoal takes a long time too, but it's understood, and the medium it can be understood, and once you see how to erase it, it's not that complicated. Not mess, but it's easier than paint. It's less permanent. The next step, number 3, is the different medium applications. You have to learn how the paint works. Once you've learned how to draw, and once you've learned how to assess value and how to check for it, then the next step is the medium. And so at this point, usually if you're one of the academic schools, and the Florence Academic School or the Angel Academy, what you're going to learn is how to apply the paint, oil paint, to understand the value, and then they start introducing colors to it. They talk about it warm and cools, the warm being the redder colors and the cools being the blue and greens. Those are the cooler colors in general. So you learn to work with the with the gray, to make it warm and cool, and to give a more sense of feeling in it. At this point, you also learn, not in the academies, but I learned how to work with acrylics, very little with pastels, which is similar to charcoal, but it's a lot more versatile. So once you start learning how to use pastels, acrylics, and oils, you're still in black and white. You're still dealing with value and the scale between white and black at this point. But you're learning how to reproduce images almost perfectly. If you put them side by side, it looks like an image, like a photograph. And that's not what they're going for. They're trying to learn how to reproduce images. They even do it from life. They start working from life at this point, and you have plaster casts that they use to light it properly, and then they reproduce this in oil or in charcoal. And so that's the next step, because you want to be able to reproduce what you're seeing visually. In other words, you want to learn how to reproduce it with different techniques, with paint, with charcoal, and with graphite, and with pastel. Now you go to step 4, and that's color theory. And color theory teaches you how to properly gauge color as it changes around a form, and this is where it gets a little complicated, and it's a mix of color and value. And the way that you make color change by adding colors to it, that's referred to as the hue, the proper color that it is. For example, red, that's a hue. Red, blue, magenta, yellow, orange, those are all hues. The value of that color can be adjusted, and in color theory they teach you how to do that, and they teach you how to do it to not sacrifice color, chroma. So, because if you just add white or black, then you gray out the color, and there's a place and time for that, for graying out a color, but you mostly want those colors. You want those colors to have their independent qualities, and you want it to be reflected either in the shadow or in the light. So there's decisions that gotta be made, and that's where color theory comes in. And then at that point, when you actually know how to draw, and you have pretty good construction techniques, drawing construction, meaning that it looks like the proportions are there, and you understand value, and you understand color, how to make color change. And by the way, in different mediums, it's different techniques. You will work in in pastel, you will change color differently than you will change it in oil or in acrylic painting, or the acrylic paint. The way you change the color and represent something is a different technique. So not only are you learning color theory, but you're learning how it works in different mediums. And then at that point, these things happen sort of simultaneously in schools, but there's a lot of focus in these specific areas. So at that point, when you know how to reproduce something and you know how to build it with the construction lines, then you know how to color it, how to value it and color it at the same time, and you can reproduce it. Then you get into composition theory, you get into figure or anatomic study, because there's memorization when you're doing life studies of or even cast studies. You have to understand the construction of different body parts, or the way that landmarks, different point perspective drawings for landscapes works. So you have to understand how composition works and how to make it effective, because at this point you're planning to come up with your own drawings, your own paintings, your own pieces. So you want to either take life studies from real life, or you want to create life studies, and we learn successful composition and how to observe when we see successful composition so that we can reproduce it. With anatomical studies, you look at poses that work, you look at different body types, you learn about gesture and the way that the gravity and your gait is affected when you're in a particular position, how to make it look realistic. And you also learn about trying to represent the things that you want to represent, that you want to emphasize in your pieces of art, and the things that you want to minimize in your pieces of art, because if not, it just can become too much. So they want you to tell a story with your pieces, and so you can do that with color, you can do it with light, you can do it with form, you can do it with all of these at the same time, but you're taught how to do it so that when you see a masterpiece, you can understand it, and so you can replicate it. And then there comes the specialization, which I don't know if it comes at the end or if it comes out through all this time. I think people specialize. And some areas are, for example, landscape, portraiture, still life, which is sometimes used to get to this point, but some people specialize in that and they do it very successfully. Incredible portraits, incredible pieces. And abstraction, and I'm sure that there's many more in the field of illustration, in specific paintings for specific processes. There's graphic arts where you learn to do all this without a brush, with a digital brush. And I haven't even started that yet, but I've seen a lot of video tutorials online of how that works. And it's a process to learn it too. And there's a lot of artists that are sharing a lot of that right now. It's a great time to be online and to have the access to social media. So those were just some of the things that I wanted to cover. And I'm going to start doing some lessons in the area of drawing. I've already started, and in value assessment, and in medium, understanding medium for acrylic and for oil paint. The approach is different. Everybody knows that acrylic dries very fast, and that oil paint takes longer, so it's more forgiving, and you can get some different colors that you don't get in acrylic painting. But I would challenge that. There's techniques. There's some incredibly talented people out there that are challenging that theory. But whatever the case, you can reach me. You can text me at my handle on Instagram, which is The Grateful Artist. You can also message me at my YouTube channel, is The Grateful Artist. You can reach me there. And I also have an Instagram account, which is The Grateful Artist Star Wars, which I specifically paint characters from Star Wars in a black and white value because it's faster. And we're gonna start doing some color portraits there right now in the next coming days. I hope you enjoy. If you have any questions, feel free to message me. And I hope this was helpful. This is a conversation that was never had with me when I started in college. I took a couple of art courses, and I was really turned off. No one explained this to me, the path. And so it took many years until I was 42 years old to get started doing this. but my life has never been the same, and I enjoy it very much. And I know that you're going to enjoy it very much too. And find a friend in me and in my channels. You can always reach out to me. And if I don't know the answer, I know enough artists that I can get it for you. I'm learning every day, and I'm enjoying it very much. And there's a lot of joy in art. You can make a living doing art, but you can have a great hobby and a great life doing art and never make a penny from it. And sharing with other artists, and it's a great life. So I invite you to go through this journey with me and the rest of the artists on earth. We're trying to idealize the beautiful things around us, and sometimes we succeed, and we make good friends along the way. Thank you very much, and we'll be drawing soon.